What's good, party people? This is According to Woods, and I have the honor and privilege of talking to a standout mixed martial artist coming to you from the East Coast of the United States. She's the one, the only Mariah Castro. Mariah, what's
Oh,
going on? I know that was weird. That
oh
was weird.
man, that was like that's triggering because every time I get announced, they either the commentators or the announcer call me Maria,
What
so
is up
that
with
hurt a
that?
little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
No,
sorry.
it's okay. It's okay.
The
I'm
first
joking.
cut is the deepest, which again, commentators and announcers. It's Mariah, folks. It's Mariah. So hashtag never forget. But Mariah, how are you today?
Pretty good, hanging out. It's my
Hanging.
day off. It's my only day off of training of work, so I really use this day to just relax.
That's absolutely cool. Which I mean, in terms of because obviously kind of juggling work life, family life, and the career life, and sharpening your skills. What is a typical like we're heading into, Monday, right? So, what does your typical day kind of look like in terms of training or what have you?
Well, as soon as I get out of work, usually about 4:35, I head right over to the gym. So I don't stop home in between. I'm there until probably about 8:30 at night because there's a few classes. So I'll do a private session like pad work or conditioning, and then we'll have an MMA class. So I'll take that with everybody else where we drill and whatnot, and then I'll have the jujitsu right after that. So those workouts will keep me there till about 8:30 at night. So I'm there for close to 4 hours some days. Um, so it's a long,
Wow.
yeah, Monday's a kind of a long day, and then I get home. I'm gone for the better part of the day, you know.
That seems like it, but I thank you for kind of explaining it because most people will see an Instagram or a social media post and go like, "Oh my God, it's so awesome," and what have you, and not know all of the kind of underlying things that it takes to kind of get you there.
Yeah, I meet those kind of people in real life all the time, where they're like, "Oh, I watch." Actually, yesterday, last night, I had some teammates fight for Flex Fight Series in New York. So, there's always those people that are like, every time I see this, I want to get in there. And I'm like, do people have any idea like what this really is? It's just so funny. They're like, yeah, I think I could do that. Like those kind of people. And it's funny. Like, I'm not offended or anything, but it's like, you have no idea. Like put them through one fight camp kind of deal. And
Yeah, and that's kind of why I do this. One of the many reasons why I do this, like, and not to say that I wanted to get into fight, I just loved it. But just, I think it's not to say it's easier, but like if you're a fighter or you are a jiu-jitsu practitioner or a Muay Thai practitioner, or at least wanting to learn the art and the skill set of it, your coach are like, okay, here, blah 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 blah, like they've seen it before. They're like, you want to talk behind the microphone? Like, I'm not even good in front of a microphone. Like, what the hell? Like,
yeah, I don't know. It's always easier from from the bleachers. I say there's no problem. I encourage everybody to be to get involved, and you can be a hobbyist. Just I feel like everybody should know where they stand.
yeah, absolutely. And I don't care what you call it, whether it be Muay Thai, Jiu Jitsu, boxing, MMA, left way. It all is on the mats, right?
Yeah.
The canvas, right? And as everybody forgets the arts in mixed martial arts or the MMA acronym, right? But it's all art. It's all art. And, if you choose to, you get to basically partake um, whether it be peripherally or an active participant in some of these things, sparring matches and what have you. But you can say, "Oh, I train here. I can do this." Blah blah blah. The mats don't lie.
Yes, that we always said that. We always say the mats don't lie. And like we're pretty traditional too at our school. Like I know a lot of fighters don't train in the gi a lot, but I do gi sometimes 5 days a week, at least 4 days a week. So, I do no gi as well, but I'm big on tradition and not neglecting the martial art, like you said,
Yeah,
because, you'd be surprised when you put some of these people in a gi, how it changes the dynamic, for even some of the best grapplers that they don't like a gi because it's limiting. So something to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny with like when it comes to jujitsu, right? That's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu or BJJ. It's its own lineage, right? But then there's
Yeah.
like Russian sambo, which is like half gi, half shorts. Like there's judo and it's full gi, but the grips and the weaving is different. Then there's catch wrestling where they just long tights. Let's go. Like and it's but it's the tradition of it, and I think it's awesome. And I'm also infuriated to an extent because like the Olympics, right? The International Olympic Committee wants to take out wrestling come the next time the Olympics roll around. I'm like, that's literally the only lineage and vestige that you have from ancient Greece and Rome and what have you. But like, you're gonna keep the walk running, and not if you're a
Yeah.
walk runner. Kudos to you. You make it to an Olympic level doing that, or if you're a luger in the Winter Olympics or a curler, kudos to you, good sir or ma'am, or whatever you wish to identify as. But it's just kind of ludicrous of all the things.
Yeah, to take out one of the most popular. I mean, the Olympics for boxing, judo, and wrestling. Those are the only things that I honestly will watch. Is the combat sports, and the lineage of wrestling, how far it goes back. How can you even think about removing that? I just there's
Yeah,
definitely, like you said, there's definitely other things that could go before wrestling.
yeah. Well, it's kind of like like kind of a dangling the carrot because for years and years there has been especially the last 10 years kind of a petition to go with jiu-jitsu being included in the Olympic Games, right? Well, that might happen, but it might happen at the behest of the ending of wrestling. So it's just like,
Yeah,
yeah,
that doesn't make very much sense. It's
yeah.
just it's completely different. Would they help each other? Knowing the other will help your game as grappler for sure. But they're two completely different styles and objectives. At the end of the like, they're just your objective in wrestling versus in jujitsu is just they're completely different. So I don't see why you would just try to lump them together or make it one or the other when they're two completely different concepts.
No, 1,000%. But that is somebody who's a practitioner, not somebody. I mean, the people that are making the decisions, and whether
Yeah,
that be International Olympic Committee or any other kind of totalitarian kind of ensemble of people, they might not know what they're getting into, but they definitely have the I guess the right to vote.
I don't know. It always seems like the most. I don't want to say incompetent, but when you look at the people that are judging fights, people that are making decisions on behalf of athletes, they never seem to be any sort of they never seem to be athletes or anything. It's just they're so distant from the problems, from the issues, that it doesn't make any sense. You see any of the people judging these fights and you're like, some of them are even falling asleep. I'm like, you don't have any interest in this. Or the idea that they'll use boxing judges to judge MMA fights. Like, that always sat with me, is like, it just like, what? You don't even, obviously there's a bias if you're a boxing judge. You're probably not gonna want to see grappling. And it's just, that's another thing that's always been kind of shoddy to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think not too long ago, Cub Swanson basically said, he kind of put out a tweet, and it was just like, if you want to be a reporter or media person in combat sports or MMA specifically, you should have at least 3 fights, right? And I hear what he's saying. I hear what he's saying, but also there's a gal who does all of the Pride kind of rewinds, for syndicated UFC TV, right? Her name is Kenda Perez. Well, Kenda Perez has never fought in her life. I mean, in terms of like actually punching and
Yeah.
kicking and as a organized sport, right? Well, Perez is actually married to one Cub Swanson. So I'm all like, oh, bro, are you kind of checking your wife? I mean, half of the Swanson, household income is you fighting and her doing her thing, which I think she's fabulous, by the way, along with Megan O'Leary, Karen Bryant. Again, those are people. John Anik hasn't fought, right? I mean, technically, Joe Rogan under he did Taekwondo in like '87 or whatever, but technically under Cub Swanson's deal, that Joe Rogan is not even qualified to
Yeah.
to commentate.
Well, I'll be honest with you. Um, I feel like Joe Rogan some days convinces me that he isn't qualified because of how biased he can be, when he's commentating. He's there for color, he's there to scream when things happen, but
Yeah.
sometimes I don't like his takes on things while he's commentating. I'll be honest. Anik, I'm a fan of Anik. I don't think like I understand what Cup is saying. I don't think people need to have fights in order to cover the sport. I'm more interested in the people who are scoring these fights and their credentials. Um, I'm not saying that you have to have fights in order to judge a fight or in order to even like referees, like
Yeah.
the judges and the referees are what people should really be paying attention to, as far as credentials. People, journalism is going to be journalism, and not everybody's going to agree with everybody's style, with what they're saying. I remember so long Helwani caught a lot of flack. Now people like him. Like, he used to be probative, and he used to, you know, people used to not take a liking to that. But there, journalism is what it is in any sense. News, MMA, NFL, whatever you want to call it. It's all going to be the same. But to me, it's who's reffing, who's judging.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. And that's why, refs like Herb Dean or Big John McCarthy, Merglada in terms of the Eastern Seaboard, they, as a part, if you're training and go to their academy, it you have to grapple, you have to strike.
Hmm.
Those are prerequisites, like the curriculum for Herb Dean School specifically, and he only holds them like maybe three, maybe four times a year, right? So it's a select few, right? And there'll be 300, you know, that sign up and pay the tuition, and by the time it's graduation, theoretically, there's only 8 people there, you know, and but that's it. That's kind of a way, because I mean, look at Merculiata, Herb, Big John, and Big John has moved over to commentary, right? But think about that, right? And think about Big John retiring from doing actively refereeing, because as big as he is, his body could not withstand pulling somebody off of another prone person, anymore. And he was like, a person could die from me not getting there quick enough. So I'm just going to, I'm done, or like a Jimmy Smith, the cornerstone of Bellator, the early days of Bellator, him and Sean Wheelock now of the BKFC. And, they were the Rogan and Goldberg of Bellator MMA during its early days. They're the commentary team that called the first two, Eddie Alvarez, Michael Chandler fights, and so many other great fights for Bellator. Bellator releases Jimmy Smith, right? He goes to the UFC for a year, and they axe him after a year. And arguably, by many people's standards, Jimmy Smith is the best, whether it be analyst or commentator of MMA outside of Mauro Ranallo, right? In the game right now. And he couldn't find himself, in a major North American MMA promotion. So now he's with the WWE doing Monday Night Raw.
Listen, everybody's going over there because that's where the money is. That's where they're paying. And at that point, when you've been in that business so long, and same thing like for John McCarthy, like he was a ref for so long.
Yeah.
You want to eventually move on. You want to do more. Like he invested a lot in the sport in general. Being one of the people that even helped conceive rules in the UFC. Like it lets you know how long he's really been around.
Mm-hmm.
So, and like you said, Jimmy Smith with Bellator, like there has to be more when you finally climb that ladder. Like after the UFC as a commentator, where do you go? You know what I mean? You
Mm-hmm.
just you shift, you change, direction. So
Yeah, absolutely. Which, speaking of, the directions and directions one would take, I mean, obviously we talked about, like, kind of the current day, but, like, how did you get involved in combat sports? Were you always a fan, somebody in your family, or you just kind of saw a gym one day and you're like, what's the story of Mariah Castro in terms of combat sports?
I was always into combat sports. Like when I was young, about 8 years old till probably about 13, I did karate. It was just something I just knew I was interested in something. And then after that, I played a lot of sports. I couldn't commit to them because I didn't feel like I was fulfilled with them. And then when I was about 14, I started getting into jujitsu, right? And then I'm like, okay, well, jujitsu's not enough. I need more. It just was really progressive, and I was at a jujitsu school that was strictly jujitsu. They couldn't, I knew I wanted to start striking and things like that. So it was like I had to move on, eventually. And I wound up taking a break. I went, I was in college, and then some way, like, in the beginning of college, I was like, okay, I have some time. I want to do something. And I actually had a coworker tell me, like, listen, come by my gym, you know, check it out, see if you like it. Because at that point, I knew I wanted to do MMA. Like, I didn't know if I wanted to fight, but I knew I wanted to train, and that grappling just wasn't enough. So from the first day, it was rough, but I was sold. Like, I just knew it. I was like, okay, I want to do this. And I honestly didn't think about fighting for a few years. Um, yeah, after
Wow.
training. Yeah. Because, I'm a tough critic. So I didn't fight for 4 years until, yeah, I was training for about 4 years before I even took my first amateur fight.
Really?
Yeah.
That's almost getting a I mean, like a bachelor's in combat sports training at the very least.
Yeah. And at that time, it's funny that you say that. I was literally, it was finals week for me in college, right? I had a full time job, and I took this first amateur fight, but it was like I wanted it so bad because I waited so long. So I was willing to just kind of organize my life however I had to. And after that fight, the Monday after, I fought on like a Friday. That Monday, I went and I took a final. My face was all, yeah, it was bad. But I explained to my professor, I was like, listen, I'm going to have an MMA fight. If you see me look like this, don't be concerned. But yeah,
So, I mean, obviously, your professor at this particular point is important. They're disseminating their knowledge to you, but like, what about the family? I mean, here you are, like putting all the knowledge into the noggin theoretically, and then you're like, oh, I also might get all the knowledge kind of punch out, but also punch out the knowledge of other people. Like, what was their reaction of it?
well, my parents always knew, like my family always knew that I was rough around the edges. Like I was always doing something like adventurous, like it was skateboarding. It was always something like a like tomboyish kind of thing. So it's they're not surprised. My dad is actually a big fan of it. My mom is really supportive, but she doesn't watch my fights
Right.
because she can't bring herself to do that, which is fine with me. But she's happy that I'm doing what I want to do, that I'm setting out to do what I'm passionate about. So that's just, I'm sure any parent could probably just resonate with that. Like maybe you don't agree with the whole combat sports thing, but you're just happy to see, your child do what they want to do, kind of thing.
No, that's unbelievable because it's kind of crazy, and you still have basically been successful in this venture with the support because there are a lot, and I'm sure being in the gyms that you've been in, and some of the locker rooms that you've been in, you could see like this person is getting into this fight or getting into this life because why love me. They're like right, like they're not support, and they actually get into it with the chip on their shoulder, wanting some sort of adulation or what have you, and they could do great things with it. I mean, look at Paul Harris, right? Who's smart? Paul Harris, knee bar the hell out of you, but that's because he was abused, and like there's so much mental trauma that he went through as a child and a young adult, that's it. But also, is he everybody's favorite training partner or opponent?
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. Like at the end of the day, I'm a martial artist, and I just, my reason for doing this is, I like the evolution that I've been able to see in myself and show, and I just want to see how far it can really go. Like, this is something I really believe that I'm going to continue to evolve, and maybe even bring different kinds of, I hope I could raise the bar for women's MMA, to be honest with you. If I'm going to just,
Yeah,
yeah, that's really what it is for me too. And eventually I hope that I can get into, commentating or analytics or what have you. Like, that would also be something that I would want to do in the future as well. So, like, I'm completely invested in it, and that's just, I just knew that I wanted to, from the first day that I trained at Carnicella MMA. I just knew, like, this is what I want to do, and I'm just pursuing it.
I think that's amazing, and it's amazing, especially the fact that you can say that, and it's not like a pipe dream. When Julie Kedzie or obviously Shannon Knapp of Invicta, right? Gosh, why am I forgetting her name? But she used to do Invicta. Now she's at the UFC.
Um,
Blonde gal. Oh,
Laura Sanko.
Laura Senko, who's brilliant, absolutely brilliant, right? And she's one who had fights and what have you, and saw that her kind of career lay not so much in the Invicta cage, but basically in front, holding the mic on the other side of the cage, right? And that's the thing, that there's an opportunity where, like maybe a Shayna Baszler wouldn't have had, or what have you, that it is in the conversation, it is in the pop culture lexicon of like, oh, there's been Ronda or Cyborg, or you might have seen the Mandalorian with Gina Carano, right? And like they're like, oh well, she used to fight. You're like, what? Like, there are pop culture references, to do that. But also, I believe in your heart, where if there wasn't before, you'd be the one to kind of break through all of those proverbial glass ceilings.
Yeah, that was on my mind too. Like, even before they had all these women doing, analytics and interviews and things like that, I would say, I'm like, it's missing. That's what's missing. They don't have any women doing it because, either women couldn't get their foot in the door, or they weren't as well versed, as you needed to be. It takes a lot to sit there and study the sport. That's why I appreciate John Anik so much, because yes, he's not a practitioner, but he's so dedicated to studying and learning that, he does, I can respect his opinion. And I just feel like women weren't able to get that same kind of, they couldn't establish themselves either, because, for a long time, even the women's MMA's, the bar was set low. It's only now just expanding the way, like the way it is. And we're noting that these high level, women exist. At the time, like, that's why Ronda, fell off the way she did, was because she was a part of a wave where the skill level of those around her was, like, just be honest, for what was going on at that time. And then she tried to make the transition, and she just wasn't able to keep up with the new wave, you know.
No, 100%, 100%. Well, but on the other side, again, like in terms of historical significance, we go. I remember it was the very month my dad passed away. It was December 2010, and this is when Strikeforce was still here, and Ronda had just beaten Misha Tate, and Misha Tate is another one that has crossed over. She was a front office person with one championship for 2 years during her first part of retirement, right? So, with that all being said, Dana White was captured coming out of a like a steakhouse here in LA, and asked about Ronda, and he was like, you know what, that's cool, but we'll never have women in the UFC.
Yep.
Within a year, Ronda's there, and she doesn't even. She comes in with the championship. Like, not many people get to do that. It wasn't like Eddie Alvarez came with his Bellator title, or they even acknowledged it, or acknowledged the fact that Chandler coming out of Bellator was just in a title fight, or Jake Shields, a Tyron Woodley, a Jose Aldo. Think about that list, right? but Ronda was able to kind of like trade in her Strikeforce title for a UFC title. She was even like, if you see it, Dana just gives it to her, and she's just like flabbergasted, right? And now there's four, divisions. I mean, we just had, an instance of the main event of a UFC fight night,
Yep.
be headlined by women, and it's not even a title fight, which is in the same echelon of men, right? Like if a men non-title fight can headline of either a pay-per-view, any card, right? Then there's something there. So um, never say never, says Justin Bieber. So that's what I got.
Yeah, I always said, like, people trashed Ronda a lot, and I was like, people have a lot of gratitude to give to her for kind of paving the way for women's MMA. Like, she got Dana's attention,
Mhm.
with what she was doing. He didn't have any interest in women fighting, probably because he paid no mind to it. And then this girl got his attention, and he's like, well, wait a minute. And then he probably said, well, there's probably some money in this, because everything with Dana is money. So, that's something that, we owe to her for getting noticed and kind of putting women's MMA on the spectrum, because it wasn't even a thought. Even, that happened with boxing too. Um, you know, when women weren't allowed to box. And I forget what her name is. I think it was Christy. She was you know who I'm talking about. And she kind of put, women's boxing on the map. So it's a similar dynamic where I don't forget almost like the lineage, because it's so short. Women's MMA doesn't have, a lot. It's not deep. So, it's worth noting, like recognizing the people, even the first strawweight champion, like I'm a strawweight. So the idea that, I actually have a weight class that I can get into, you know,
No, 100%. And it's Christy Martin.
Martin.
Yeah, Christy Martin. Boxing Hall of Famer, and she came to boxing and not in the greatest of, times, and her coach, and it was
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
really bad. But look at, I mean, you can't denote the greatness, that she paved the way. People like Aaron Tohill or Laila Ali, paved the way for Clarissa Shields and so many
Yes.
others, to even, be in conversation, to headline pay-per-views, no matter what the buy rate is. And, that's one of the reasons why I do love, I have kind of a partiality towards women's MMA, because I think even after, the Marloes Cohens, the Misha Tates, the Ronda Rousey, the Chris Cyborgs, and Gina Carano's, and what have you, right? Amanda Nunes, right? Even after all of them, right? There are still people who don't know that both MMA and women's MMA exists in Vicka. Like, they don't know it exists, and I'm all like, that's it. So, in my feeling is the women's MMA even still is in the same kind of formative stages as men's MMA was in the mid '90s.
Yeah, absolutely. There's still room, like I said, I hope to be a part of that evolution, because there's definitely still a lot of room for growth. Um, but it's good to see women, on more main cards, doing main events and getting a lot more media attention, and positive media attention, not in the sense where it's like, not inappropriate kind of attention. They're being more objective. Treat her as a fighter, not just as a woman who's fighting.
Hmm.
Why are the questions any different kind of situation? So, it's good to see that things are evolving with that. And yeah, I feel like I'm coming in at the right time, like at a really good time, where I still, I'm still just getting started. I'm at the end of, toward the end of my amateur career, but I'm still just getting started. So, I like to see where things go for women's MMA, and the talent that's coming up, even the talent that I train with, the people who are around me. It's so interesting to see that new wave that's coming in, and how everybody's, elevating women's MMA, because it would be nice for women's MMA and men's to be at the same, level almost,
Yeah,
basically. But that's what I'm aiming for. That's you want it to be even across the playing field. You know.
I agree 100%. Which, this is kind of a broad question, but it kind of piqued me as you were speaking. But in terms of what that vision looks like, as told by Mariah Castro, what does that look like? Is that maybe 2 to 5 years? Is it maybe an Invicta card being so stacked that everybody's you could be a homegrown Invicta star, and make $250,000 per fight? Does that mean there's multi-million-dollar, like women's MMA gets the same kind of attention, or at least monetary value, as like a Tyson Fury fight? Like, what is there commentators? Like, what does that look to you if you were to kind of sculpt it a bit?
I mean, well, you mentioned Invicta. It would be nice. Like, it's cool to have an all women's fighting organization. That's honestly cool. But I think it needs to be elevated a bit. I think there's still some revamping to do with Invicta if you're going to have an all women's fighting organization. I like what PFL does with the tournament style. Why not do tournament style stuff? Like, you just kind of have to add some elements in there that draw people's attention. You have to elevate the value of your organization, what it means to fight for Invicta, in an all women's fighting organization. If you're gonna have that, I just feel like commit to it. um, would I be happy? Like, I don't care if there wasn't an all women's fight organization personally, because I think a fighter is a fighter, and if you earn your spot, you earn your spot, regardless. That's why, like, the Contender Series, I'm a big fan of the Contender Series, and I like that. It's not like, oh, I never see women on there. I see a good amount of women getting their shot on there, and a lot of them have come from Invicta. So it's a farming organization. That's fine as well. But yeah, like, coverage, is always going to be the case. There are always people that could be marketed more. Um, there's a few elements that would change it. I do see, like, 2 to 5 years, like you said, that you're going to see a different, a swing with, like I said, all the new fighters and the different people that are adding more elements, because MMA is changing. The styles are changing. So I think definitely 2 to 5 years, you're going to see a big difference.
I hope you're right, because I think and even Joe Rogan, who's not popular in some circles, will say, like, okay, Amanda Nunes is literally the baddest woman on the planet, right? First ballot Hall of Famer, double division champion, right? And she's an openly lesbian woman. Her wife fights in the UFC. Well, I mean, like, we were kind of talking off air. I was driving for Uber. Right in West Hollywood, Beverly Hills adjacent, is the parent company of the UFC, Endeavor, right? Literally a mile away is West Hollywood. Why isn't there Amanda Nunes posters all over? If you want inclusion, right? There was Fallon Fox. Obviously different, right? Male transitioning to female, what have you. There was Fallon Fox, the gal that identifies as a woman in Combate not too long ago, right? About a month ago. And
Yeah.
I would love to see, a male to female division, right? And organizations. Like, I want, like, the equality for all, right? But you for what we have right now, right? I don't want Amanda Nunes going like Dr. J, right? Dr. J inspired Michael Jordan, right? But he retired before the big money could come in. And once the big money's there, even though he was Jordan's hero, he basically was just like pretty curmudgeon about it. I don't want Amanda Nunes or Chris Cyborg, who are looking to other things, like boxing, to kind of come in, right? Or might challenge a Kayla Harrison or Clarissa Shields coming up. Like, those are the things, but have to go outside of the sport, whether that be another sport, whether that be another opportunity of a sitcom or a movie or a commercial. Like, I want that to come by way of the UFC, especially the fact that the UFC is owned by the largest talent agency in Hollywood. Come on, it's not that hard, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like everybody feels pressure to expand because, like you say, the pay is not that great. It's not money that you can just live off, and sit on. you have to kind of be active in order to live the lifestyle that you want. It's actually funny, like Cowboy, said it before. He's like, I keep fighting because I spend a lot of money. I need money, and that's the position where, fighters need to understand that, and they need to brand themselves and kind of and consider other opportunities and grow and use, like, not just rely on fighting. Unfortunately, that's not going to be, enough. Everybody's pressured to expand, whether they make their clothing brand, they make their alcohol brand, whatever sports line they make. If it's equipment, it's always something. They everybody goes into something. You know, so I mean, and I think that using your platform as a fighter to promote other things for yourself is wonderful too. Like, that's a great opportunity. It's much harder to promote your own business when you don't have that leg to stand on. So it's working out for people, and I'm glad to see that fighters are not just being fighters; they're being business people. You know, that's good.
It is good. It is good. But also, obviously, one of the parts of almost a championship level strategy, right, on how you live your life as a martial artist is the gym that you're in. And you wear your colors, and we've actually linked the Instagram page to this very podcast, so you can check them out. But how important is your gym to your success?
Wow. Super, super important, especially because, my coach is super, super invested in all of the fighters. And having that individual attention, as well as, the group when we do pro training together, it's nice because in bigger gyms, people probably struggle to get that attention that they need in order to develop their skills. And, you're in a sea of what, 50 people in a gym. It's really hard, to establish yourself in that. So it's nice that we have a tight knit group, you know, and it's they are a major part of my success. My training partners that are pushing me, and then my coach that's, being completely honest with me and letting me know, what I need to do in order to take it where we want to take it. It's just it's indescribable to have a team that feels like a family, and you just know where you belong after having been in other schools prior. If you've been somewhere where you just know it's not for you, when you get to the place that is for you, it's just that much better kind of situation.
And it's crazy because, at times you can pay a pretty substantial amount of money to get training. We're talking just jujitsu alone could cost you a couple $100 a month.
Yeah. It's
You
like
know,
250 now. Like,
right?
yeah, 250
Absolutely,
a month.
absolutely. So 250 a month, and then you're kind of circulating and mirroring that with some sort of striking, which is not built into jujitsu, right? And then you have to eat clean, and then you have to, like, all of these have tos, and there's not a lot of money coming in. You were talking about opportunities and what have you. If you're looking at especially MMA as just like a career, like or a business opportunity, you'd be like, no, no, like, you mean I'm gonna be 30% red, like,
Yeah,
under
absolutely.
for the large part of my career. I can't remember who it was. Oh, Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. It wasn't until he started towards the end of his career, right, did he start making the really, really big money fights, right? So it's just kind of weird, but just to be able to expand yourself, that's it, and have a team that supports you is amazing.
Yeah, I definitely tell people, like, this isn't, if you want to make money, this is definitely not the sport for you. Like, it kind of weeds out, who's, you kind of see who's really in it, and then who has the wrong idea about whatever they saw on TV. It weeds them out. But yeah, once you realize how much of an investment it really is, and I mean, like you said, you're redlining because you're paying for, your medical exams and all these things for your fights, and all your equipment. Like, equipment is not cheap, and you have to replace equipment. It's just it's an investment, your time, for sure. um I have understanding friends and family, so it's for me, I'm in a good situation where they know that if I'm missing in action, it's because I'm just really focused. I'm on my grind. They know what I do every day in, day out. So nobody expects me to be kind of overly involved in things. They understand the commitment that I've been doing it for the past 6 years or whatever. So they pretty much got the picture. So I'm well into this investment, but people looking in, I hope that they understand that as well. There's a lot behind the scenes that that you don't see. And that's why, like, people make fun of fighters for getting emotional when they do, like, any interviews, or, after the fight or before the fight and stuff. And I'm like, you really don't know what a person went through for their fight camp, or is going through, had to overcome, what this fight meant for them. Maybe that was the last fight on their contract, or maybe that meant that they might not get re-signed if they lost, or like, these people are fighting for their lives, and eventually, like, when I turn pro next year, it'll be me doing the same thing. So the seriousness of the investment, like, yes, it is not about money.
I like the fact that yes, it might not be about money. It's your proliferation as a burgeoning martial artist, right? First and foremost. But I love the business analytics that you put to the decisions that you made, which I kind of want to get into. You said you're nearing the end of your amateur career, so I mean, what does that look like? Are you out for a regional title? Like here in California, we have the California state title as like the one last like kind of feather in the cap before you ascend to your pro career, right? And not to say that it always happens. There are some teams and some gyms that you know go on to never win a California state title, and but will go 3-0 in the pros in a promotion like Combate or a short notice UFC or a Bellator fight. So, like, what does that look like to you? Is it championships? Is it particular fights? Like, what is the kind of calculation of you're nearing the end of the amateurs?
Well, I actually would have fought this month. It would have been last night, but the opponent had to pull out a few weeks ago. So apparently we rescheduled for December. I believe it's December 11th. So that is supposed to be for the 115-pound title for Flex Fights in New York. Um, so if that's the case, that'll probably be my last fight at amateur, and then in the new year, I'll be able to explore options, because there are a lot more options at pro for me at this point. All the opponents that people are presenting, they want to make their pro debut, or they're already pro, and so my back is I'm against the wall here with finding opponents. I really can't be picky and choosy. I never have been able to be, because it's a shallow pool, for me anyway. And then so hopefully I get that fight in December, and then I'll be able to close it out with a title. It'll be 7 MMA fights, one kickboxing fight, and I'll say, that's a good amount of experience. Let's see, and then maybe I might not even go to 115 initially. Maybe I'll do catch weights. Maybe if I'm getting paid and Invicta wants me at 105, maybe I'll do that. Options are plenty over there. I just didn't want to cut a lot of weight for amateur where you're not being paid.
Yeah,
So,
that is absolutely
pro.
that is absolutely smart. I because that we just saw that in Combate on Friday. Diana Mendoza, who usually fights about 105, like atom weight, maybe straw weight, kind of move up to. I think they did a catch weight of 110. And I mean a victorious one for her. I actually got to sponsor her, so there's the According to Woods logo right on her shorts. But this is somebody that I've seen kind of come up through the amateur scene and got an injury pretty early in her career, so she basically played cheerleader to all of her other teammates that won amateur titles and went on to pro and all this jazz. And then now it's like kind of her time, which it seemed to me it's a bit similar to yours? I mean, obviously not the injury, but like the opportunity that could present itself. You know, like the 4 year, like that's you're like a master's degree mixed martial artist. To me, obviously, you know, there's belt levels and what your coach thinks. Like, listen to them. Don't listen to me. But I mean, that's you. The work that you've put in. You're a doctor of MMA. You know, at this juncture of your career, and you're not even pro. And you know, I mean, we're doing this podcast. You got your wits about you. You got a degree. Like, you're firing on all cylinders, Mariah. This is great to hear, man. And again, like, whether it be a Fearless Woman MMA, whether it be Invicta, UFC, Combate, like, I can't see how they, like, nobody sides you. Because someone, like, I almost want to talk to some people and go, like, oh, she's here. Like, yeah, wait until January and she's going to be great.
I really appreciate that with all the support. Like, you and having been on Mom's Basement, like this is
Shout
the
out to Mom's
perfect.
Basement.
Yes, shout out to Mom's Basement. I really appreciate it because this is a crucial time for me to network and expand and you know um, kind of make my debut before my debut almost. I just, put myself on the radar kind of deal. Obviously, when you go pro, you got to think like, all right, well, we're going to go with whoever's paying. You know, it's everybody wants to be in the UFC. Everybody wants that. That's the dream. If you're really committed to this and, it's lovely. And I really hope that things go that way for me. But when I'm first starting out, it's got to be, who's paying right now. It's like, so I hope I can establish myself, pretty much. I might start regionally, I
Yeah.
fought for them, amateur CFFC. I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah. So I fought for them. I did advanced amateur, and they put on a really nice show. And they're another, really good farming organization. I hope that I could, have pro fights with them or, even Invicta. They're always looking for girls. That's always a possibility as well. So I'm not necessarily picky about where I go. I'm just excited to just start that journey. Like, after having waited so long to even take the amateur fight, now I had a pretty lengthy amateur career and I feel like my composure is where it needs to be. My skills are just as good as a lot of the other girls that are, starting out pro. I don't see why not.
No, I love it. But not to pull back the curtain too much, but I was actually having a conversation with Mom's Basement MMA, and we both appreciate you for coming on both of our podcasts. And if you haven't already done so, after you do this one, check out Mom's Basement MMA for another side, another dimension of Mariah. And, oh, God, they're super analytical over there. Like, he does like, of that, like, John Anik, not template,
Yes.
because obviously he's doing his own thing, but like, yeah, it's so analytical. I got so much of your fight career that I use kind of in reference for this because, mine is more lifestyle. He is like MMA hardcore. So go ahead and throw him a subscription. Go ahead and like the video. I do. He's awesome. And that's actually, total disclosure, how I found Mariah. So thank you, Mom's Basement MMA, for that because this would never happen. But we both appreciate you for taking the time to answer us because, like, I I've had people with 300 followers go talk to my manager. Okay, bro.
That's a bit much.
You'd be surprised. Like, most people are like, "Oh, Woods." Actually, for those who don't know, this is actually the 500th episode of According to Woods.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's you, Mademoiselle.
Oh, I
Uh,
like that. That's a
yes.
nice surprise.
Hey, well, there's the thing, right? You want to shatter barriers and glass ceilings or whatever. Here's that. You're the centerpiece, right? The
Now I'll be
last.
mentioning that in my caption.
You please do. It's all for you. Actually, the 1 year anniversary was Ashley Evans Smith, right?
Yeah.
July 1st. So I started July 1st, 2020, and then basically July 1st, 2021, Ashley Evans Smith. So this is the next kind of proliferation of
Right.
acknowledgments, and it's Mariah Castro.
Wow. I like that it wasn't planned. It just so happened, it aligned, and it worked out.
Worked out. It so worked out. And to quote Chris Canyon, who better than you? Nobody. So there we go.
Also,
I,
I wanted to thank you and Mom's Basement for reaching out as well. You know, not it's not everybody's forte to be on and chat like this, but I enjoy doing it. So I was happy that you guys reached out. Like just to I don't talk about myself much, so these opportunities to kind of like get have people get to know me a little better is definitely good for me. And then I get to have perspectives from you, and like you said, Tyler, he's a lot more analytical. I thought that was funny. When he was really breaking things down, it seemed almost like he knew my fights better than I did. That's kind of like how I felt. I was like, oh man, like he really,
yeah.
and then this one, is a lot more, it's more open ended. So I hope that I'm not talking too much.
No, no. Anybody that says, "Oh, I hope I didn't talk too much," "Oh, I shouldn't have said fuck," please, whatever you want to do, this is your forum. Because how else are people going to know you, right? Like,
Yeah,
and that's my deal. I mean, I'm a father and grandfather. I, might not be Vogue, but I swear in front of my kids, right? Because I don't want them to go like, "Oh my God, like Dad was this way with us," and then on the
exactly.
podcast he's
Yeah,
something different. Like I want it to be there, them to get to know me get to know them. The same thing with my guests. It's like we could talk, and people ask like, "Oh, what are we talking about?" And it's like, talk about the sun, maybe. We'll talk about some fights, cool. But I mean, whatever you want to turn it into, let's do it. Like Josh Burnett was on here, and we talked pro wrestling, almost nothing of his career, and it's just because everybody wants to talk to Josh about
yeah,
MMA, and
exactly.
yeah, and catch wrestling, and I will talk catch wrestling and pro wrestling. So that was fun, and it's just it's a conversation amongst friends, right? And again, like you said, Tyler, John Anik to me, right there, like right there in terms of their tact and knowingness of it, and so thankful, and there's different, just like there's like you were talking about, being in the gym, and how your coach is so kind of invested in each and every one of you. It doesn't feel like kind of a circular kind of factory, and just
Exactly.
right. But you can make a champion, or a million, a couple $100,000, or black belts, or what have you, doing either way. Like, and that's kind of the fun thing about combat sports to me. Like, if asked, what do I like about combat sports? I probably still, of as long as I've watched it, can't tell you, but definitely for a human interest piece, there's nothing better than combat sports, because you get to see what a person's soul is like right there.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Like fighting and training and having, committing to anything that much can show you what you're made of. Me fighting might mean something else to someone else who has the same kind of commitment. I just think when you lock two people in a cage and, you're tossing a coin and you're saying, who wants it more, who has more heart, it comes down to a lot of things that you learn about yourself and how far you can be pushed. And even in training, when you're in these camps, you learn things about yourself, about how discipline, when you're being disciplined, about how it becomes, in the beginning, you're cutting weight, right? It sucks. And then your body starts to become used to it. And then that's not even in your mind. And people will say to you, oh man, that sucks. I bet you can't wait to eat. And you're just like, dude, I'm in a different mode right now. Like this teaches you things about yourself. You get to places that you just don't get doing other things. I feel like that's to me, that's what it is. And I got like goosebumps saying that, to be honest with you. But yeah, it just takes you to a different place, of what you're willing to do. And even like when you're in those moments where it's survival,
Mm-hmm.
it's a different thrill, it's a different kind of rush that you get. Can't explain it, any better than that.
No, absolutely, and also kind of like, not to mention like the troubles of some MMA veteran of the past or what have you. But that tends to be the reason why they either still do it or get into some nefarious acts, right? Like Joe Louis at the towards the end was basically like a greeter at the casinos in Vegas, kind of like the a lot of guys end up becoming like hitmen and
Yeah.
stuff like that, bounty hunters and what have you, just because that thrill of God, that thrill of the chase and being rocked and up against the ropes and fighting your way back. And I just saw it in Combate. There was a guy got rocked like within 3 seconds and whatever, and he comes out, and he made it. He still lost, but it went to a decision, and it was super competitive. One of my favorite fights of all time was Jaylen Turner versus Richard Leroy here in Southern California. You can find it on the Fight TV app, CXF, Cali Kings 8. And it's just like Jaylen, it was a battle of Goliath and David, right? Jaylen Turner, he's now in the UFC. He's tall, lanky, 6+ feet.
Yeah.
Richard Leroy, about 5'9", Anglo gentleman, African gentleman, right, of African descent. And Jaylen Turner, like, basically, theoretically, KOs Richard Leroy in the first, like, 17 seconds of the fight, right? Tell me how Richard Leroy ends up TKOing Jaylen Turner in the third round, right before the round ended. Like, last 10 seconds of the fight. And Richard Leroy is on top of a prone, huge Jaylen Turner. It was just like one of those people riding an anaconda or a boa constrictor. Like, it was just like, it's wild, And, yeah, I mean, that's it. I mean, Mike Beltran, who was the ref for that fight, came out, and I just happened to be, like, where he was. And he was just like, brother, that was probably the most intense experience of my life.
Yeah, definitely a plot twist. But, no one's ever out of the fight unless, the ref is waving it off. Like, there's been plenty instances where we've seen, like, some of the best comebacks. I always laugh whenever Darren Elkins fights.
Yes!
You think this guy is out of the fight, and I don't know where he digs. This is what I mean by you go to another place. He digs, and he comes out on top, and he doesn't get tired. You could beat him up for every minute of every round. In that last minute, he's still coming at you. Like, he just turns something on. Guys get tired of beating him up. Like, that's a strategy, okay? You're like, okay, I'm going to go in there. I'm going to make him tired of beating me up, and then I'm going to turn the tables.
I mean, I love that you mentioned that because,
Yeah.
like I said, the Jaylen Turner and Richard Leroy was there for that. But I was there for UFC 209 in Vegas with him and Merced Bektik. I heard that scream, though. Like, it was crazy. Like, nothing. And that's why, Tyron Woodley and Wonderboy got booed so loudly, is because that was, like, the Elkins-Bektik fight was third from the top.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was third from the top. And then we had I think it was like, it was another title fight, or it could have been a DS. No, it wasn't a DS fight. I can't even remember. See? I can't even remember that. My mind doesn't go past.
It wasn't a Valentina fight, was it?
No, I think I had the here. Yep, I do have it. It was supposed to be Habib Ferguson, one of the fights that got canceled, right? That's still on the ticket, like on my credential press pass. It was supposed to be Ferguson and Habib, right? And then that gets scrapped. I don't know what gets put up, but I know it was third from the top was Elkins Bektik because I was actually there because of Albert Morales, who fought, and that ended up becoming his only UFC win at UFC 209, right? But yeah, that Elkins, again, those two fights, Elkins and Bektik from UFC 209, or the Jaylen Turner Richard Leroy fight at CXF 8, I will put that against any boxing, karate, kumite, whatever fights, and just watch this. And if you don't get it, I got nothing for you. Like, you will never become a fan of this. You will never appreciate this. But here it is. This is their soul. And if you don't like the souls, then I got nothing for you.
Also, when Tyson Fury came from that knockdown,
The
That's
Undertaker
another.
rise up. Yes.
Yes, when it was like we were ready to call it, like everybody was like, "All right,
Yes.
it's done," and then I don't. In the last 2 seconds, he springs back up and he's like, "No,
Yes.
like I'm good," and I'm like, "What?" And
Yeah.
Deontay's face, right?
Yeah.
When he saw him get, because he's celebrating, and then he sees him get up, and he's like, "What?" His face, like it was so funny, like
I liken it to when one passes away, the brain gives one less electrical shock to the rest of the body, which could it could be in the form of a hand raise or sit up or fart or whatever, just a multitude of things, right? And once they don't get that signal back, then it's over, right? That was that. It was that. It was like almost Fury's like, are we dead? Are we dead? Nope, we're not dead.
yeah, he definitely had like his soul leave and then come back, and it was definitely cinematic. Like how we
Yes.
view it in movies, like it was definitely that situation. But
Mm-hmm.
like I said, he went to that place.
Yeah, man, that place is amazing. Which, in terms of favorite fights, do you have any favorites as a whether it be you yourself that you've been in, you've seen your teammates in, uh, or for things that you've seen as a spectator? What are some of your favorite fights?
um, I'll be honest, I don't have a lot of specific favorite fights. I have like specific fighters, and I just admire every performance that they put on. So like, I'm a big admirer of Rose Namajunas, to be honest. I think that she's like, wow, she's so complete, and the attention to detail that she pays is her form. There's so many things like her footwork. I just think that she's technically sound, and I'm a nerd for technique. Like people, they like their power, what have you, but I'm really big on people using techniques the right way, and I just love the way she puts it together, her combinations. She has amazing jiu-jitsu. Her being that well-rounded, I want to be well-rounded. I don't want to be one of these people where, you know, you're like, yeah, I'm going to take her down and that's going to be the game plan. I want you to go in there and it's a toss-up, and that wherever the fight goes, that I'm still in it. And I think that that's, Rose. She's a technician. Even Joanna, Joanna's a technician.
Yes.
I just don't think that. I think Rose has her number. I think that she's way more technically sound with her head movement and her footwork, you know, things like that. Um, and then, aside from Rose, I'm a big Dustin Poirier fan. Really, really big fan. Um, I think he's a person that like he's 100% heart. I like people, that they go in there and they put their all into everything. And since his setback, he's been, since his setback to Khabib, like he's been doing so well that
Mm-hmm.
like he's an example of somebody evolving from that. There are people that fought Khabib and never got any better after that. They never bounced back. They, you know what I mean? They lost confidence in themselves.
Edson
Things like
Barbosa.
yeah, well, exactly. Things like that. He went to featherweight, so
Mm-hmm.
he kicked you out of the weight class even.
Uh-huh.
But I just like to see people evolve, including myself. Like that's really big to me. Like showing my potential in my amateur career was what the name of the game was for me. And then seeing myself evolve, and then I can't wait to see what I look like as a professional athlete. So I just like to see people evolve. Like even Rose coming back from that Andrade, the knockout where she
Knockout,
got
yeah.
slammed. Yeah, that was so rough to watch, but to see her come back from it, I'm just really big on people like that, who put on these performances, and they don't give up.
I love it. I love it, and I like your reasoning behind it, which I have to ask. It could be any. It be past, present, or future fight. Anyone alive, dead, or whatever. Who would you like to fight? But also, like if you're talking about Rose, man, maybe be in her training room getting ready for a fight. Like, who's do you have like a dream scenario where you're like, hey, I made it. Like I'm fighting this person, or do you have like a anybody that you would just putting your kind of fantasy booking hat, and it's not because of hate or anything. It's not a call out, none of it, but just because of the person that and fighter that person is. Who would you like to test your metal against?
That's really tough. That is a tough one. Um, as like a, as like if I'm seasoned or
Or
like, or
yeah,
if,
it could happen at any point of your career. You know, your first pro fight. It could be your last. It'd be if there's a UFC title fight in your division and what have you. Who do you want to be on the other side of the octagon with you?
boy, this is the toughest question that you're probably gonna ask me. Um, I don't know that I have a fantasy fight for the UFC because at the end of the day, it's like by the time I get there, I want to know like who's the best around, who do I have to beat to get where I need to go. That's the kind of person that I am, you know. As far as like a fun fight, if I had to pick like what would be a fun fight, um, I think this is gonna sound funny, but I think a fight with like Tisha Torres would be really fun.
Why not?
Only because she puts on a pace that's like
Yes.
incredible. I like, you know what I mean? Like, it sounds like silly because she's not like, or like, you know, Angela Hill.
Yeah.
Um, you know, if I was in the UFC, like those would be fun fights for me. I'm not gonna be like unrealistic and be like, yeah, I want to fight Valentina. You know, like if I got to the point where I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna fight Joanna, I'm gonna fight Rose, like that would be insane. But on like a more realistic scale, where like if I'm in the UFC and I have like, you know, I'm taking a short notice fight, right? Say something like that. Yeah, like some, you know, people like that. You know,
I'm
people that will you know really bring the fight.
No. Tisha Torres is one of my favorite. Team Tiny Tornado. The first time I saw her on the with the Ultimate Fighter with Rousey and Tate, like I was just like, you know, her spouse, you know, Rocky Pennington, much like Amanda, you know, Nunes and Nina Nunes, like you know, power couples in the UFC, which is awesome. You know, they kind of put Ortega and Tracy Cortez to shame. You know,
Oh man. Well, they just you know came on the scene way too quickly.
yeah,
It was just it. I mean, I hope it works out because they are like full throttle.
yes.
Like they are really they put themselves out there. So now we really have to commit to this.
I never knew. Like, I, we're first main basis with Ortega, just because you know he's cornered you know a bunch of guys that at fights that I used to do you know interviews or commentary for. I didn't know he had kids. In the
Not
last
until
like
tough.
5 years, I've probably been in the same room talking to Ortega probably about 20 times.
Yeah.
Did not know he had kids, right? Until the Ultimate Fighter. So
Yeah.
like it was almost like second date. He's like, "Here's my kids" and whatever. And she's
Yeah.
thinking, like I was like, wow, "Okay, right on." And they're both fabulous people. I mean, many people have a pro or con, whatever. If you're a fan, they're great. If you
Yeah.
have to deal with them in business, maybe not, right? But he's always treated me well. He had nothing but great things about Tracy. So, you know, looking forward to her upcoming fight that got canceled, you know, a couple weeks back. So it's just, you know, it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah.
Which, in terms of good, right? There's a lot of good going on there, right? That has attributed to a lot of your success, both inside and outside of the cage and gym. So, Mariah, take as long as you like. Let's get some shout outs out of the way.
First, I like to shout out my team. Obviously, Carnicella MMA. I have the T-shirt on. Always got a rep. Um, yeah, my coach Paul Carnicella. You know the man behind everything. And then my teammates or training partners, Elise, Jen, and Eric. And then my physical therapist, Durante PT. And then lastly, I also have a chiropractor, Soretto Sports Chiropractic, because recovery, you know, and I didn't even take recovery that seriously until probably like this past year, but that has actually changed a lot for me. So, you know, definitely get into recovery if you're watching this and you're not doing it.
I like it. I like it a lot. Yeah, you know, it's weird because a couple of years ago, oh, you cup, oh, you know
Yeah.
might take a CBD. All of those things were lowbrow, but
Yep.
now you could see the circles, right? You could
Yeah.
see people, like taking Instagram selfies, and they got an inversion table in the back, or doing a what is it, the sensory deprivation tanks and the float tanks and whatever, and all of this like 3 years ago. Like, talk to Don Fry about any of that.
Yes. Well, it was looked at like as being like, it's like, like it's like dramatic, you're like, oh, like you're sore all the time, whatever, you never think anything of it. You're like, oh, that's what it is with this. Like there's just kind of like there's a stigma, around it. You're like, you brush it off, So now with all the things that are, coming out, that everybody's getting more involved in recovery, and they're seeing like it does make a difference, like in your performance, so it's funny how things come along. Like it was almost like it was like caveman times with Don Fry, and it's like and where it is now.
Oh, did you hear he wants to come back?
No,
Yes.
no commission should ever sign off on that.
Oh, you're talking to a guy that was like at the weigh-ins for Tito Chuck 3. Like, I was there. It
They
was
shouldn't have even allowed, like, I don't even like for Tito to have taken that boxing match. What are these commissioners thinking? Like, you should go to jail.
it's
For,
boxing, yo.
I know.
Somebody gets an envelope.
If Evander Holyfield, like that shouldn't have happened either.
Somebody gets an envelope backstage. Come on, don't say you don't know.
I
Come
know,
on,
but it's
Mariah.
like it's hard to look at that shit though, like and
Yes!
really stand on it. Like you're a boxing promotion that is really like putting this on. Like I wouldn't do it.
I mean, pro wrestling was my into combat sports. It was competed in a ring, da da da, and then that ring I kind of followed, boxing, right? Chavez Senior, Thomas Hitman Hearns, De La Hoya, the early coming of Floyd Mayweather, Tito Trinidad, right? Like all of those guys, like hell, even Butterbean. As a 10-year-old kid, Butterbean was on my Mount Rushmore because I'm of a certain age. I saw Tyson knocking out motherfuckers in headgear on ESPN Friday Night Fights, right? The next person that I saw knocking out people in fucking headgear as an amateur was Eric Esch, aka Butterbean. So fuck yeah, I got love for Butterbean. He even competed in MMA quite a few times toward the end of his career, but it fucking happened. Yeah, so that's it. But the last 3 fights, boxing fights that I really got into, was obviously the Mayweather Pacquiao fight, and disappointed. And my last kind of electrical current to the brain, I mean from the brain to the rest of the body, and my body being boxing, was the 2 Canelo Triple G fights. And for sure, those motherfuckers got envelopes in terms of the judges, right? So I was just like, yeah. Like last weekend, the Fury. I love Fury, but he's just in the thing that I don't like, So it's just like,
Honestly, that fight, it wasn't a pretty fight, man. Like I didn't.
It was
think,
a one-sided fucking ass kicking. That's
yeah,
what it was.
no, it was, but in the sense that I don't feel like Fury looked better either. I
Right.
think Deontay just looked so much worse
Yes.
that it made Fury look good, but I don't think that he looked better than he did. I guess because he came in heavier this time.
Yeah.
That was a factor, but I didn't feel like he looked better.
No.
He won that fight because he's gritty, and Deontay doesn't evolve. But I just I didn't feel like either man really looked better.
No, I agree with you 100%. I actually fucking had nothing to say to that because you said it so impeccably. So, but that's the thing, and we saw it with like Andy Ruiz too, right? Like he regressed, right? That little the helium got to the brain and just like blew up the damn thing, and he never recovered or evolved, and it's so sad because again, here's a sport where that shitty fucking decisions are happening, but per every 18 inches, right? In terms of like asses and every 18 inches, right? That fight was in Vegas. UFC's done that very same arena, and literally done a quarter of the live gate, right?
Sheesh.
So same seats, just like literally 500% more. Like a UFC probably costs you about $1,200, right? Ringside, gate side, whatever, right? 2 to 5. When we're talking about $50,000 to $250,000 for ringside seats,
That's insane.
it is, right? So,
That's outrageous.
but that here we go, or $30 to $50 pay-per-views, or 80 if you're UFC. Well, those boxing ones are 100 plus. I live in California. We're one of the highest fucking tax rates in the union, right? So when I'm done with it and I look at my bank statement and my wife is going, "What the fuck?" I'm at $125.
Yeah. I don't understand, boxing isn't at its height anymore. It's not at its peak. So you need to, reassess what you're charging for pay-per-views. It's not like our stars are limited now. Like it's a lot of the young guys that are coming up that people are paying mind to. Like obviously Canelo is always going to be, as long as he's around, he's always going to be, center of attention if he's fighting. He's that fight with Plant. I can't wait for that. Like I've honestly not been excited for a boxing fight in a while. I'm not gonna lie to you. I watch it because I love to watch fights. I do. But for me to be like, I'm invested in this one. Like this one's good. And then I have, you have who is it? Tank Davis
Yeah.
fighting. Is it Haney that he's gonna fight, or was it no Rolando Romero? That's what it's gonna be. The guy he calls himself Rolly. So it's like the younger guys that are prospects that are coming, gonna fight each other, process of elimination.
Right.
I mean, Ryan Garcia is out of the mix right now because he has a hand injury.
Right.
But you got all those young guys: Haney, Garcia, Romero, Tank Davis. Like those are the people that people are, Shakur Stevenson,
Yeah.
that people are paying mind to right now.
Yeah. And
That's interesting.
with so many kind of like horses in the race, like who emerges, right? Like a Trofimo Lopez is another
I was
one,
just gonna
right?
say that too because
Yeah.
he's super young too. He's like
Yeah.
23, right? Isn't
Right.
he? Like,
Yeah. So that's the
dang.
thing. It's just like, but how? Like you said, boxing is not even in a quarter of what it was during Tyson, or De La Hoya, or Chavez Senior, or
Absolutely.
right, or Sugar Ray Leonard and Tommy Hearns, right? But they can command bigger paydays and people actually pay, versus MMA, where they're like kind of timid to charge like $75, front row seats to their regional card, or offer bottle service, or command these big paydays. But it's an apples to oranges comparison, right? Because there are some promoters that want to charge you $75 to $150 for a amateur fight that all of them go to decisions,
Yeah.
and it's not even like close. It's not even close. Or here we have, every ring announcer that says it, I go, oh fuck, it's gym unaffiliated.
Oh,
That,
and they not. Yeah.
yeah.
That's
Oh, there was one fight, right, where this guy was literally on the dark main event, right, out of a 22 fight card. They entered the cage at like 1 o'clock here, SoCal time, right? 1 o'clock. He gets mollywopped, like knocked dead dick in the dirt, right? And he can't remember his name, whatever. He needs to be hospitalized. Doesn't know his name, can't find his wallet, whatever. Then this gal comes up, like there was a bunch of us just kind of, you know, having a beer or two, right, or eight, in the backstage area, and she's like, "Have you seen this? Blah blah blah." My husband, she's pregnant. She's fucking pregnant and whatever. Turns out she's the wife of the guy who got knocked out. He couldn't remember his name or whatever, and it happened at a casino. So he told her that he was going to gamble.
he lied
She had no fucking idea.
and he just jumped in this and was like,
He,
yeah.
he paid he paid the $20 for your fucking license. There you go.
Oh man, that's so bad. The
I
idea
mean,
that pretty much anybody could just jump in and fight is like,
oh, have you seen Alima McFarland's first fight?
oh yes, that was the soccer
Soccer
mom.
mom.
Yes. I think what's funny too, we have like the same. I think we have the same last name. I think her last name is also Castro.
Wow. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's all colonialism, right? Because you know, Latin Filipino. Like my wife, right, is mostly Filipino, right? Mixed with a lot of other things, but mostly Filipino, right? But she also has the the same last name of some of my Mexican, Honduran, Cuban, Puerto Rican, Venezuelan, Belizean friends. I'm like, what? Oh, colonialism, right on.
What's funny though, like for that fight, like I don't think I would have had the heart to do that. Like Ali Malay is a
Yeah.
savage
Well,
because I
yeah.
don't know if I would take that fight. Like you could just see, like when they're like doing the announcers like calling out her name and whatnot. She's just standing there like casually, like
Mm-hmm.
I don't. Do you realize like what you're about
The
to do?
hell that you're
Yeah.
going to. I'd
And
rather play in
like
fucking traffic.
she's in like an outfit, like she's going to the supermarket. Like
Yeah.
I don't even like. It was just so bad. If I'm a Lima, I'm like, damn, I might go to hell for this one. Like,
Right. Yeah, but I mean the payday's good. It's kind of amazing, and not I don't know, and I love, the whole 10 Planet Freaks and San Diego Combat Academy, Manolo, the Broadfather, right? And then Boogie and Gio Martinez of 10 Planet Freaks, right? Like there's nothing. And I'm not saying I don't even know if she fought under their banner when she took that fight, but I have seen like them go into Mexico, right, for vacation, right? Like some of the gals on that team because there's some of the best women fighters, Kermouche, Ilimele, what is
I
it?
think Pro Gonzalez is
Per
over there
Gonzalez
too,
is
right?
out of there.
Yeah.
There's so many like amazing, and the amateurs are just fucking nuts. Tina Pettigrew and Jaws Fuller and um, God Miller. I forgot or attempted killer Miller. I want to say, God, there's two Millers. I don't want to fuck up their names, but they, if you've seen the post from there, you know who they are, right? But I've seen them maybe been on vacation, right? And then there's a local card in like TJ in Tijuana that might be lacking a female fight, and they'll just go in there and fight for beer money for the fucks of it, man. Those are some bad motherfuckers.
Yeah, that's different shit. Like,
Yeah, and Manny will be right there because he vacations with them, he trains with them. Manny's right there in the fucking thing. Fuck, Manny just fucking won a pro wrestling title just for the fuck of it. Like,
I didn't even see that, and I follow him too. So
yeah, no, he's the Pancrase. So obviously they've got the promotion, in Japan that's still an MMA promotion, but there's a U.S. leg, and the U.S. leg is a shoot wrestling company, almost like Josh Barnett's Bloodsport. No ropes, kind of, knockouts or submissions. That's the only way you win, and what have you. And Manny fucking stepped out of retirement. And I think he beat one of his own fucking his
his
own
own.
fucking students.
No, that's savage. They are all savage over there.
They are.
They are just different kinds of.
Yes, and that's what I know. It's just like I could train. It'll never not be for fun, right? And if I'm gonna fucking tap. Like I've been, I roll on the mats with Herb Dean, and you're like, oh, mild minor referee, whatever. He's a fucking gorilla.
Yeah,
I know
he's
people
legit.
that, yeah, I mean, and when you're rolling with upper belts, they're just kind of like
Yeah, letting you
playing
work.
with you, yeah, like a fucking cat in a ball of yarn. They're unraveling your whole fucking game, or just lay there. That's the worst. Like they'll just fucking lay there, and then like 30 seconds before the round ends, you're fucking in an anaconda, whatever the fuck, from north south, and it gets fucking weird, man. But that's just the shit that happens. That's why I'm very comfortable doing with this thing. Fuck all that shit, man. I like my
Yeah.
brain cells.
Yeah, I mean, you could always tap.
Yeah, 100%. No, there is a gal in our gym, Justine Lee, right? and she's done a couple amateur fights, but she's like a doctorate, like graduated from UCLA or what have you. We call her Never Tap because you can put her in sketchy fucking situations. She doesn't tap, and she always almost gets the sub, or like before the round ends, just fucking edges you out, just like, yeah, she's a fucking world beater. Yeah, and I've seen her fucking in there with UFC talent, Bellator, Combate on open mats at Fight Academy in Pasadena. Like some of the fucking best grapplers in the world, and she's
Yeah.
just like never fucking tap. I am the complete opposite. I'm always tap. If I'm in a sketch situation, fuck it, dude. I need to go to work in the fucking morning. Fuck all that shit. I can't fucking you anaconda me and my eyes pop out and I fucking shit myself. I can't. I only got one gi, damn it, and it's the Elio 100. I can't get a fucking shit stain. God, come on, some
Well,
decency.
I feel like a lot of fighters are almost like they never want to tap. Like I've definitely gotten some sketchy situations, and like yeah, I got out of the submission, but then I'm like shit, like my shoulder really hurts. Like later on that night, you're like, was it worth it? And you're like, you're still gonna do it next time. Like you're still gonna try to push it and get out of the submission. But
See,
like
yeah,
if I feel like my shoulder is gonna snap or like I'm gonna go to sleep, I'll tap right before then. I just we just push our limits a little bit because we're stubborn.
that's cool because you know how that stubbornness can work for you. Oh, my shoulder's hurting. I need a CBD sponsorship. You need to know how to play it, Mariah. Your big
Yeah,
brother. Let me know. I got you. I got you. We
that's a
are
good thing.
fam at this point.
You
So
got me
that's it.
there.
Yeah, I'm just saying. It's just like, oh, I need that chiropractor, bill at the month. Maybe we get that taken care of because they're on your fight shirts. Like, let's work it out, man. That's it. Like I said, Diana Mendoza, Combate, her, she's 2-0 as a pro. According to Woods, is right on her fucking shorts, man. And that's the only time I've ever done it. But then I saw it and I was just like, should my wife, should my kids? I was like, I think I might do it again. This sponsor thing, man. I like
Why
it.
not? It's a good way for you to get. It's mutually beneficial. That's the thing about like sponsorships is like, why are they so hard to get when they're so mutually beneficial? Like,
Oh,
and then it's like you don't want to ask for them, but do they get offered? Like, how does that even come to be most of the time? Like,
it's a weird one. So, and that's almost where you're kind of skewed to having a manager, right? And again, I not trying to pull the curtain back too much, but also for anybody that's watching it that are looking into. I mean, there's people that are both male and female that are doing jujitsu. They get more in sponsorship than somebody actively competing in MMA in the UFC,
absolutely, yeah,
right? So, I mean, it could be you just know somebody, your fucking rolling partner just happens to be a firefighter and they're in the firehouse, they have a particular chili and they want to fucking put that on. Or your trainer's dad, has an electrical company. You remember Dynamic Fastener? That was just fucking screws and nuts and bolts, and the guy just loved MMA, and he was just like, yeah,
started making
yeah, Dynamic Fastener for everything. But it's almost like with the Manscapes and there's a few like Manscaped or CBD MD or what have you. That's kind of or on it, right? Joe Rogan and our RB Markets is on it, right? Those are those top echelon. That's almost like John Jones getting Nike and Monster, right? Where it's rarefied air, and you have to get a manager because that manager has those connections because
right.
you can almost see it, right? Like it's so funny to see where like I'm looking for a fight, and then that management company like we just signed blah blah blah, and then the person has a Manscaped fucking promo code, and then gets a short notice fight for Bellator or UFC. It's
Hey, man, if it works, it works,
yeah, yeah,
right?
and I wish it could be better, but like at this particular juncture, it is what it is. So yeah, man. But speaking of what it is, you are on your day off, so I don't want to take too much of it. You've been so lovely. I asked you for an hour, you give me a whole 90 minutes. But for those who want a little bit more of Mariah Castro, and to see your ascension from obviously your final amateur fight to the pros and everything that you're doing, where is the best place they can find you on the interwebs?
Definitely on Instagram or Twitter. My handle is the same, at Mariah Castro MMA. So, feel free to find me, reach out if you know sponsors, especially now that we're talking about it. But yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate you reaching out. So,
No,
I'm like I said, I'm gonna thank you to death, but it's
I
whatever.
I'll take it. I appreciate it because I have imposter syndrome, and I'm like, I don't believe any of it. So that's kind of my gripe. But that's it for another day. But also, thank you guys for watching us here at According to Woods. And if you haven't already done so, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe to the According to Woods podcast on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. I mean, Mariah, you're subscribed to the podcast, aren't you?
I am. I am.
Hell yes. So be like me, be like Mariah, but be more like Mariah than me, for sure. Uh, but I also want myself to succeed. But be like us, subscribe to the podcast. And if you don't believe us, and I don't know why you wouldn't, here's pro wrestler and undefeated mixed martial artist, Zeta Zhang.
Hey, this is Zeta Zhang. Make sure you subscribe to According to Woods.